Welcome to the Bulwark podcast. I'm Charlie Sykes. Because it's Friday, we are joined by Tim Miller, who is like on West Coast time. So you have to get up pretty early for this. So I do appreciate the amount of caffeination that has to.
I
You have
do
to.
to
I'm
caffeinate.
sorry. I appreciate the degree which you need to be caffeinated to do this podcast.
Yeah, I think that people notice on these podcasts that I pick up steam as we go along, and that's nice. I
It's
think that's in
mellow.
touch with people's Friday moods themselves. They get increasingly riled up, and it is. I do feel like it's tough for me to compete with last Friday's Tyler Merritt
Yeah, well,
podcast on the energy department. That dude has energy.
he went full Hulk energy. So actually, I was kind of hoping that you would have gotten couple of extra shots this morning because I was up way past my bedtime last night because of course I stayed
Why?
up. Because I stayed up to watch the end of that epic Packer game with the Cardinals.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, now what you have to understand. I mean, so the Packers are America's team. America's team is now 7-1, going on the road, beating the only were they the only other undefeated team? Well, people will correct me one way or another. But okay, so here's the thing: Packers were without their top three receivers. They were without their top two cornerbacks. They're all pro left tackle. They're all pro pass rusher. They were without their starting center and their defensive coordinator. They had to travel across the country to play the last undefeated team on Thursday night. They had less than basically 72 hours between walking off Lambeau Field on Sunday and wheels up from Green Bay. So, as the Journal Sentinel reports this morning, they were fighting with one hand behind your back odds against the Arizona Cardinals, and the Packers left the Arizona desert with what might be the most impressive win of Matt LaFleur's 3-year tenure.
And
I'm
by the
looking at
way, they were supposed to be terrible. We were supposed to get
I
Aaron
know.
Rodgers out of the Broncos. All the gossip in Denver was Aaron was leaving. He's coming to Denver. Things are collapsing in Green Bay, and they have the best record in football right now. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, see, part of the problem was it was late, watching the game, and then of course the way it ends, where it looks like the Cardinals are either going to tie and go into overtime or win, because they're at the 8-yard line with 15 seconds to go, 12 seconds to go. So they're either going to get a field goal or score a touchdown, and then they throw this interception. But this is amazing interception. I'm up on my phone replaying it, trying to figure out because the cornerback Rasul Douglas, who was just picked up from the practice squad of the Cardinals this last week. I mean, whatever. But you look at the picture, and whoever the intended receiver was clearly had no idea the ball was coming to him. I mean, it's just like there's a picture that I'm looking at right now where Rasul Douglas, whose name I've never spoken before, obviously, is intercepting the ball with one hand, and the Cardinal is literally looking the opposite direction. Like what? Well, I mean, he's not even focusing on the ball. Nothing. So I don't know.
Well, congratulations on the victory. I did not get to watch because, and for people who want more culture chat and not more doom and gloom about politics, we at the next level for Bulwark Plus subscribers,
Yep.
we've had the listeners have demanded an all Chappelle podcast. Since I wrote about Chappelle and the other human Dingleberries this week who are complaining about being silenced when they're actually succeeding beyond anyone's wildest dreams. But I never actually watched Chappelle before writing that. I just read all the takes about it. So I could not watch football last night. So to prepare for our Bulwark Plus all Chappelle hot takes all the time, which you can get if you subscribe, which we're taping after this, I had to watch Chappelle. But the problem is I fell asleep. So I
Wow.
need to
Okay.
go. I need to go finish it. I need to go finish it after we tape.
Okay. So do you consider Chappelle a Dingleberry?
I don't. I mean, I
Okay.
wasn't really lumping.
Yeah.
He's acting as a dingleberry when he complains about how the mean trans activists are coming after him. When I believe it
Well,
was last night
you
actually, and
are.
because I saw the sign in New Orleans, him and Joe Rogan have sold out the basketball arena. The basketball team can't even sell out the basketball arena in New Orleans, but they can. So I mean, I don't think that there's any cancellation concerns. I think his complaints are Dingleberry-ish, where his essence is not, in the same way that it might be for, I don't know,
Okay, so
Steven Crowder.
very briefly for our audience who may not have seen your epic piece in the Bulwark about all the Dingleberries who, in fact, are doing very, very well. I mean, we actually are living in this golden age of the Dingleberries, where you can be canceled and quadruple your income. Actually, that understates it rather dramatically. So a Dingleberry is, and not to be confused with a Dangleberry or a Dongleberry.
Yeah, well, we don't. People can Urban Dictionary the more gross and evocative definition of Dingleberry, but I was talking about the human Dingleberries who are enriching themselves with hot and contrarian takes about politics in the world. There is I think there's this notion on the right that there is this notion on the right that people who participate in verboten speech are being silenced, and we're in this historic crisis of speech. And I think that there are certain areas where I'm concerned. It's certain areas of speech. One area I'm not concerned is people who want to be political pundits and commentators, because people who want to say, hateful things, say verboten things, be contrarians, be assholes for the sake of being assholes, they're killing it. The entire Substack ranking is never Trumpers and people who are being assholes for the sake of being assholes. Like the entire right-wing media, the Daily Wire has built the biggest media company in America on the back of saying, sexist and quasi-bigoted and quasi-conspiratorial and sometimes really conspiratorial shit. I mean, the types of people that would have never had an audience. Like, imagine in the 1980s. I wrote how what do you think Diamond and Silk, or like, what do you think their audience would have been like? The 1980s? Nothing. They would have been nothing. They would have either been writing letters to the editor or, screaming into the void. Maybe they're on a street corner. Like, and they've got 2 million followers on Facebook. They're monetizing it. So for all these concerns of free speech, it's actually the opposite. That my Dingleberry maxim is today and tomorrow and the next day will be the best day in all of human history for morons to advance their political views.
Well, and you had some stats there that were, okay, this is the political speech for human Dingleberries has never been more robust. And by the way, I'm in the process of looking it up, because you're obviously not going to define what the word is. But what you're pointing out is that the breadth and depth of the speech is so vast that somebody who hasn't engrossed themselves in internet political culture might have no idea of its reach. And this is the key thing. So if you're over the age of 35, hands up here, there are people on YouTube and Twitch and TikTok you have never heard of who have significantly larger audiences for their radical political ravings than the most preeminent policy journals had during your formative years. No kidding. So then you talk about this one guy is a 30-year-old smoke show socialist gamer who once complimented the Mujahideen heroes for doing something to Dan Crenshaw's eyeball. He makes more than, according to you, makes more than $200,000 a month to share his political insights with 1.5 million followers. So, as you point out,
while he plays Grand Theft Auto, he literally plays video games and talks about why we should all be socialists, and he makes over $1 million for it. Socialism is paying better than ever.
Yeah, and I promise you're right that even in the heyday of Henry Luce's Time magazine, no political writer anywhere ever brought in that kind of cheddar. But that's absolutely right. So,
and the next one was Steven Crowder, 5 million. Steven Crowder, who's the guy, socialism is for fags on the other side of the socialism thing, like this jerk. Like he has 5 million YouTube subscribers. Like William F. Buckley, wasn't pulling in 5 million subscribers for the National Review.
No, I don't think
this
so.
This dude's a complete maroon. So you want me to tell you the real definition of Dingleberry?
Well, no, I'm looking at Merriam-Webster. Okay.
No, I think you want Urban Dictionary.
I know. See.
I think you're looking for Urban Dictionary.
U.S. informal, a foolish, stupid, or contemptible person, right? Huh? So
it's not really what I had in mind, but yeah.
Or slang. I can't even read that.
A piece of poop that hangs on one of your butt hairs and won't fall off.
So I'm gonna make that I'm gonna get a ringtone of Tim Miller saying that. Okay, can you pull that so that I get a ringtone of Tim Miller defining a dingleberry?
Yeah,
Okay,
well,
speaking of dingleberries, I want to talk about what happened with I feel like we're caught in this dingleberry loop now, this dingleberry loop of doom,
we are.
the Tucker video thing. Just when you think we're dealing with all the crazy, all the nutty stuff, Tucker Carlson is going complete InfoWars Alex Jones. He's gonna be running this, how do you describe it? Like little mini documentary series where it's going to completely retcon January 6th into a false flag event. It's I mean it's so bizarre that even the Anti-Defamation League felt the need to write another letter to Lachlan Murdoch saying, let me just read you this from this is from Jonathan Greenblatt, who is the CEO of the Anti-Defamation League. The movie's called Patriot Purge, which is apparently set to air on Fox Nation starting this week, and this is going to have all of the disinformation artists suggesting the assault on the Capitol was a false flag, and the left is hunting the right, sticking them in Guantanamo Bay, leaving them there to rot. And Greenblatt says, let's call this what it is: an abject, indisputable lie and a blatant attempt to rewrite history. As an organization committed to fighting anti-Semitism and all forms of hate, we remain deeply concerned the false narrative and wild conspiracy theories presented by Carlson will sow further division and has the potential to animate violence. And look, you know how this ends. Lachlan's going to tell him basically, hey, thank you. I really appreciate this. We take this seriously. Pound sand. We're not going to do anything about Tucker. So your thoughts about this?
I mean, the ADL, obviously they need to be, maybe more circumspect in their language and adult in their language than we do on this podcast. But like the potential to escalate violence, what was the language there? I mean,
Yeah.
like if you haven't watched this video, it is extremely, extremely alarming. And not only is it just conspiratorial and batshit and like just full info wars. January 6th is a false flag. Just really quick before I get to the violence. Quick aside on the false flag. Like I've never understood, because this false flag theory has been around since since November. And some people were saying Antifa, some people were saying false flag, and I never really got how they knew that the false flag was going to work. Right? Like let's even say that they're right about the idea that there are 2 or 3 Fed boys in there. And they're walking around this crowd of protesters, and they're going, "Let's storm the Capitol and kill Mike Pence." Right? It's like if the rest of the protesters were normal, they wouldn't be like, okay, I went to some pro gay marriage rallies on the mall back in the days before we can have that, and if there were a few Fed boys in there that were walking around, going with their painted nails, coming up to us, being like, "Hey guys, like I think that we should." I think maybe we should get out a noose and hang the vice president. What do you think? Should we go into the well of the Senate and poop on the walls and hit cops over the head with our rainbow flags? What do you think? Let's do it. Everybody be like, who is this crazy person? Like, what the fuck is this person talking about? So like the whole theory, even if their theory is correct, that there are a couple of feds in there who are instigating, it's like, how did they know that the crowd, that that the preponderance of the crowd was going to be like, oh yeah, we're going in? I mean, and obviously there were the people that were speaking at the rally weren't Fed boys. It was sitting members of Congress and the former president of the United States. Other instigators, people that stopped the steal, people like Ali Akbar Alexander, who's in this video.
In the video. I mean, okay, this is where your mind gets bent around. It's sort of Inception type stuff. So wait, he organizes this, he leads this as a riot, everything. Is he now going to say the riot I instigated was not real? It was false flag. What? Okay,
right.
I don't want to spend any time like relitigating that it's crazy. Okay, it's crazy. It is misinformation.
Yeah.
It's the fact that Tucker is willing to go down this particular rabbit hole, and he now he's in a pissing match with Liz Cheney, who really is calling her. I mean, Liz Cheney, this woman's so impressive to me. You don't have to agree with her, but she is really pushing back. She says she tweeted out yesterday, it appears that Fox News is giving Tucker Carlson a platform to spread the same type of lies that provoked violence on January 6th. As Fox News knows, the election was not stolen, and January 6th was not a false flag operation. And then she tags Rupert Murdoch, Suzanne Scott, who is the CEO, Jay Wallace, and Speaker Paul Ryan, who's on the board. So
Ooh, I liked that Speaker Paul Ryan tag.
Well, and then Carlson goes after her like she's too cowardly to come on my show, and they released the exchange where her spokesman says, "Hey, thank you for the invitation." Basically, Tucker has had countless opportunities to explain to his viewers that the election was not stolen. Instead, he continues to promote dangerous conspiracies using the language that provoked violence against law enforcement and our Capitol on January 6th. Liz will not participate in that. Jeremy Adler, director of communications. So she's calling him out.
Yeah, and rightly. Here's the other thing about I know you talked about this a little bit with Nichols yesterday, but like when you tell people, and I think that is the incitement to violence that Liz mentioned in her tweet, and I do love that little shiv at Paul Ryan. But you look at this video, and if you're telling people that the government is going to treat you like Guantanamo prisoners, that they're coming to find you, they're coming to waterboard you, and they're coming to kill you for who you are. I mean, what do you expect is going to happen? What do you expect? I feel very much like I felt between November and January 6th, where I'm going, we're on this podcast going, this is pretty crazy, right? Like, isn't this pretty crazy? Isn't something going to happen? And the same, it's a similar thing, right? Dialing up. Yeah. And so, I think good on Liz Cheney, good on her for calling out Paul Ryan. I think that she's obviously completely in YOLO mode. I don't see or know what her path is to re-election at this point, but it's important to use the platform while she's got it. And the other thing, just one more aside on this video, we can do an hour on it.
Yeah,
it is pretty bizarre, isn't it? That like now the received wisdom among the Tucker crowd is that the war on terror was bad.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes I do feel like I'm taking credit. I'm like, wasn't it Fox that was pushing all of this stuff for all this time? Like I was there, right? Wasn't it the Democrats that were saying that this stuff was bad?
You misremember. Yeah,
is that right?
You misremember. Okay, so speaking of taking crazy pills, among the other developments this week was the endorsement of Herschel Walker for the United States Senate by Mitch McConnell. Now, look, okay, I'm going to go out on a limb here and know that Mitch McConnell knows that Herschel Walker is nuts, that he has no remote qualification to be in the Senate. But nevertheless, he figures that he has to do this. He has to bow this particular knee to the Trumpists. So you've written about Herschel Walker, and to say that Herschel Walker is strange, that he's a problematic candidate, is putting it really mildly. So what does it tell you that Mitch McConnell is going along with a candidate that would have been, I was from central crazy candidate casting?
Just to kind of put a little I think that Walker's opponent, who probably is crazy in his own right, so we'll take this all with a grain of salt, but he put out a statement about Walker that I think just sums everything up, that can kind of put some context to what follows. Gary Black: Herschel has threatened women, choked them, stalked them, put knives to their throats and guns to their head, and he claims that he must be innocent just because he never went to jail.
You said it like it's a bad thing.
Yeah, pretty stark statement there. And like, here's the thing, like we're not that far removed from Todd Aiken, right? When all these guys just all these Republicans. Now, certainly we're not perfect back then, but he just said the stupid statement about how in a legitimate rape, the body takes care of itself, or whatever it is, and the Mitch McConnells of the world were like, oh, we got to back off this guy. Now we have a candidate who is a avowed supporter of the insurrection, and who has a very, very long rap sheet when it comes to his treatment of women. And it's just jumping on board. And here's why. Here's what it tells us: is that Mitch McConnell's lost total control of the mob. The mob controls
Yep.
Mitch McConnell.
This is it.
Like
This is it.
he's just sitting on top of they're storming the Capitol, and he's just sitting on somebody's shoulders, like
coming
trying
along
to
for a
direct
ride.
which way to go. Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I am your leader. Please don't leave me behind here.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, I don't because he realizes that going a different direction would do no good. Maybe he can co-opt Herschel and like and get his own people in there, get Josh Holmes in there, and minimize the crazy by 10%, and help which is the only thing that he actually cares about, which is becoming majority leader again, right? I mean the what for McConnell, like what is good is what is good for him, and all of his rationalizations just work back from that endpoint.
Okay, so this is you mentioned Todd Aiken.
Yep.
This now seems like just a remote period in American political history.
Sure.
Todd Aiken made a comment about legitimate rape, correct?
Yes.
He had a really good chance of winning the Senate
Beating
seat
Claire
in Missouri,
McCaskill.
beating Claire McCaskill, and then he said this deeply unfortunate, deplorable thing
He
about
said his
legitimate
point
rape.
was his point was if the rape is legitimate, the female body has a way of shutting the whole thing down.
Not get pregnant, abortion.
So you don't get pregnant, so you don't have to have a rape exceptions for abortion.
And every Republican in America, I'm exaggerating slightly, said, okay, that's disqualifying. You need to drop out of the race. He refused to drop out of the race. He loses because of that particular comment. So this has become kind of legendary, but it was also a time when Republicans were willing to say, I'm sorry, that goes too far. Okay, so fast forward to 2016, and you have Donald Trump bragging about, hey, when you're a celebrity, you can do anything. You can grab women by the pussies. You can, move on them like a bitch, whatever it was. And Republicans, at least for like 5 minutes, thought, ooh, this is the kind of thing that until 5 minutes ago, we would have thought was disqualifying, but this is Donald Trump. Bad, bad, bad. But eventually they got around to it, right? They got around to supporting him. They accepted it. It was locker room talk. Remember that? That was the rational. It was just locker room talk. Okay, fast forward now to today. Now we're talking about Herschel Walker, who doesn't just talk in the locker room, doesn't have one gaffe about legitimate rape, but has threatened women, choked women, stalked women, put knives to their throats, guns to their heads. And yet the GOP at the highest levels has no problem. I mean, they're not stuck with him. They're just preemptively saying he's our guy. I mean, this is quite a transition, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, there is. I mean, maybe on a policy level, I'm sure many liberal listeners are like, what would be the difference? But like with our democracy in threat, like, look, I mean, in a different world, who would be running for a Senate and for this seat? Maybe somebody like Brad Raffensperger or a Jeff Duncan, right? Like, I mean, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, like these are the types of offices that people move from into open Senate seats, right? And instead, they're getting behind a clinically insane pro-insurrection football player. It's like, okay. I mean, like that is a meaningful difference, and I think that when you expand that, you go all across the country, and we'll have time to talk about this next year. But Sean Parnell in Pennsylvania is also the same. Obviously, we've talked ad nauseum about the Ohio Dingleberries, like they're going to be the same, right? And
Eric Greitens.
Yeah, Eric Greitens. So you're replacing
who actually tied women up and photographed them. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
And so you end up replacing people who are not profiles in courage, but who did vote to uphold the electoral count. People like Roy Blunt or Rob Portman, and you're going to replace them with pro-insurrection, unapologetic sexual assaulters. Like that. That is entropy. That is a degradation.
But we've gone from it was just locker room talk to, well, it was legitimate locker room rape. And I mean,
Right.
Who are we to say? I don't know. Okay, so because we have to be bipartisan and annoying people today, is it fair to say that the term Cuomo-sexual is now and forever permanently canceled? I mean, he's now been criminally charged. I mean, we're done with that. right?
I'm not a canceller, but I do think his career has come to an end, and I wish that there were
Okay.
some lessons learned from that, but it doesn't feel like there were, right? I mean, Cuomo was a nightmare from day one, like both on the sexual harassment stuff, but also on the COVID stuff, and I do think that there would have been a lot more credibility gained, on the left if there was more of a sense. It came belated. It came, and so credit. You got to mention credit where due. That eventually the
You
Democrats said,
do.
"No, we are a party that has standards, unlike the Republicans." But it came really late, and I just I think that as we continue on this conversation, which I'm sure we're going to talk about BBB and McAuliffe and all this, like to gain credibility with this kind of broad center that supported Joe Biden, you got to throw out the bat. You got to throw out these fuckers and say we're different than them. And so they did that belatedly, but boy, it was a rough few months for the Cuomo-sexuals.
Okay, so let's talk about yesterday, which look, I everybody needs to take a deep breath here because whatever comes out of these negotiations, this has been about as ugly and embarrassing as possible. So you give me your take on all of this, but um Biden comes out and he does prematurely spike the football. He puts the entire prestige of his presidency on the line. Nancy Pelosi puts all of her power and prestige on the line. Say, we have a deal. We're going to get this deal done. We need to have a vote today. We need to not send the president off to Rome empty handed. And they were planning on having a vote on the bipartisan infrastructure bill yesterday. The Progressive Caucus basically met and went, hell no, we're not going along with all of this. The vote is canceled. Okay, there's two different versions of this. All right, just bear with me for a second.
Yeah.
The Politico playbook is taking the optimistic point of view, saying it was really ugly, it was really messy, but Biden gets it done despite himself. Just when it looked like the day would end in embarrassment for the Democrats, the Congressional Progressive Caucus issues a surprise endorsement of the president's compromise plan, removing one of the last big obstacles. So, okay, so really bad, really messy, really ugly, but at the end of the day, good news. Okay, Jake Sherman's Punch Bowl has a, I would say, more critical point of view. Let me just read what he writes this morning. Let's be abundantly clear. Pelosi, her leadership team, and Biden proved utterly unable to convince progressives that their strategy, pass the infrastructure bill in order to give the president a political victory as he departed on a high-profile European trip, was a sound one. Biden came to the Capitol twice during the last month at Pelosi's request to talk about the infrastructure bill, yet he was unable to crack the progressives' opposition. Yet there's no denying, and then he acknowledges, I mean, obviously there was some progress made, but yet there's no denying Thursday's episode was an embarrassing setback for Democrats, Biden included. Biden was supposed to help Pelosi bridge an ugly split between moderates and progressives. That didn't happen. In fact, it may be even worse. Okay, Tim Miller, your thoughts.
Yeah. My big thought is, sure, it's embarrassing. I don't know that, like, the process question of, like, did they get this vote on the floor, et cetera, on a given day before Biden went on a given trip is all that important. If they end up getting it, I mean, this is the big Bill Kristol speech on the live stream last night about, maybe that they can turn this around. You get both, and the economy starts to turn around, and you sort of have a bad fall, and that's the optimistic kind of potential outlook for the Biden administration. My thing on their screw up, to me, the screw up is completely around the messaging side of this whole thing. And if they want to do their internal fighting over getting things passed, like, this is all that's always messy, etc. Like, the thing that I'm worried about is nobody knows what is in this. And I wrote about this a couple weeks ago, I think, but like after the last time I was on this podcast, nobody knows. They're not messaging that it's like human infrastructure, BBB, like the reconciliation bill. Nobody knows what is in the bill. They're not selling the bill, and in this fight, this internal fight has caused, where all of the news coverage about this is it going to be 3 million or 1 trillion, or the progressives going to win, or is Cinemansion going to win? And nobody is out there saying, hey guys, Like, we're offering universal pre-K. We're going to build 100 million more houses to try to relieve some of the upward inflationary pressure on housing. We're going to do some climate work. And to do that, we're going to tax people above 400,000. That would be popular, to just tell people, here are the three things we're going to do, and here's how we're going to pay for it. Most of those things are popular. It's not going to have 100% popularity, but it's going to have broad popularity in the middle. Right now, nobody knows what they're doing. And I think that, like, the people on Twitter kind of get mad at me about this because they're like, well, it's worth it because we got to use our leverage to get the best possible deal you can. And it's just like, that's not happening. They're not getting anything. All they're getting is fighting. And the bill is getting more and more complicated. There are a lot of policy folks from the left who are saying that this is turning into a hodgepodge bill. So I just think from the start, they would have been much better off to get in a room and say, what are our 2 or 3 priorities we're going to push? What is the one thing everybody can agree that we're going to pay for? And let's go talk about that. And then we can still fight behind the scenes about, everybody's little, pet things.
So I agree with you completely on the messaging. There's also an arithmetic problem that we need to remind people of, is that the progressives have this massive ambition and the massive agenda, but they don't have the votes. They don't have enough elected congressmen. They don't have enough members of the Senate. And this was always going to be a problem. If they want to get everything they want, they're going to have to win some more elections, as opposed to behaving like they are right now, which is to say that, we have the votes for this bipartisan infrastructure bill, but they're threatening to kill it if they don't get everything they want. So, since you talked about people on Twitter, how about this? Humble suggestion for Progs. Voting against a popular infrastructure bill because it doesn't solve all of life's other problems is not a path to success. And then you quote a mythical, this is you, obviously, quote a mythical congressman, Representative Tim Miller, is a no on infrastructure because it doesn't make daylight savings time permanent. That's right. I'm going to kill the president's agenda because I don't get free eyeglasses.
It's crazy, Charlie. And I mean, and they're not. And here's the thing. And I feel like I've gone ad nauseum on this, so I'll just keep it quick. But the whole premise of the argument is that all that is worth doing because we're going to get more out of it. Just as imaginary. It's just made up. It's just like this progressive hive mind where they think that they have leverage over Manchin and Sinema. They have no leverage. That Manchin and Sinema don't give a rat's ass about these 2 bills. Like, Manchin, the best thing Manchin could do for himself politically is for both these bills to be killed and for the squad to say, it's Joe Manchin's fault. He'd put that on a TV ad in West Virginia and say, this is why you need to reelect me. You're the one man between you and the squad. So I don't know. Look, I think that they're going to get this stuff. I think that hopefully there will be important things in these bills. Like, I'm particularly, the housing stuff is a hobby horse of mine. So, climate, obviously, spending is needed. Hopefully they will end up getting that. But like, at the end of the day, I do. If you just put the policy aside and just think about the politics and the long-term, medium-term politics, I do wonder if, like, Democrats would have been better off having 49 Senate seats. Where Biden didn't have this kind of pressure on him, because, like, I just think that the expectation that he's going to give everybody a pony when they have just 50 Senate seats is obviously misguided. So hopefully they can get a stripped down thing through and fix this stuff and lay out the crystal plan of righting the ship by winter. But boy,
yeah, I don't.
It's ugly right now.
I think their other messaging problem, because nobody really knows what's in it, is that people know that it's really a shitload of money.
Yeah,
and
right.
you add together and by the way, you have to look at your notes even to remember the names of these things. The Build Back Better, which may be the worst marketing handle of the decade. The Build Back Better bill is nearly $2 trillion, and then you have the BIF, the bipartisan infrastructure bill. You have BIF and BBB. That's another $1 trillion. So we're up to about $3 trillion, and then they've already passed legislation that spends we're like $5 trillion right now. And if voters look at this and go, yeah, I don't quite know what's in all that. I just know that it's a shitload of money. And I know that gas is going up and it costs more money to go to the grocery store. If they sort of have a sense that it's just a lot of spending for other people for things that don't actually address their problems, then that's a real problem. I mean, people need to remember that, that people may say they're in favor of certain things to pollsters individually, but if the overall sense is this is bad for the economy and it's bad for me, then it's not going to be a political winner, no matter how you message that.
That's true, and also perception is reality. People get the perception that it's going to be good for them because you tell them it's going to be good for them. Look, Trump, for all of his gazillion flaws as a politician, we don't need to list them all. We've done that ad nauseum for half decade. Like he had some things that he was good at, and like one of the things he was good at is, you think if in this moment with all these prices going up, you wouldn't have him do some stupid fake executive order in the West Wing that talks about how he's going to deal with the rising prices and all this sort of stuff like that. That was the part that he was good at, and there's just not that sort of nimbleness right now to match the concerns of real people with what they're doing. And there was a time, I think maybe 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, where I was out there saying, I think maybe some of these bad polls for Biden are outliers. Like, let's wait and see. We wait and saw. And like, I think his numbers are now actually worse than people realize. If you look at some of these state polls and stuff, and that's not good. And so like they gotta pivot. And you saw a little bit of it yesterday with how he's talking about this and talking about inflation and all that. But
I thought that was important for him to emphasize that he has to, somebody is telling him you have to address the question of the deficit and of inflation. You need to speak to those voters as well. Okay, so let's put everything in context. What happened yesterday? So our mutual friend Mike Murphy tweeted out, "What a day on the Hill. Dems blow past yet another deadline as they learn what life with their own Freedom Caucus feels like. Speaker Pelosi tried to throw Terry McAuliffe a last-ditch life preserver, but these safe seat progressives threw him a battleship anchor instead. Unbelievable." Okay, so let's talk about Virginia. Terry McAuliffe, the Democratic candidate, in a lot of trouble. I know you talked about this on the live stream, which Bulwark Plus members have access to, and I want to get your take on all of this. New Fox News poll showing Republican Glenn Youngkin up by 8 points. This feels like it's sliding away.
Yeah, there's a Washington Post poll out this morning that has McAuliffe up 1. So it's hard to tell, obviously, whether that Fox poll is an outlier or the beginning of a trend. I saw somebody made an interesting point this morning, and you remember this happened in the first year of Obama in an even bluer state, Massachusetts, with Scott Brown. Taking that Senate seat, that was crucial, much more crucial than this is really in the grand scheme of things as far as passing legislation was concerned. Massachusetts was, I guess, 2x more Democrat than Virginia is right now. So it's very plausible that it's not completely impossible that Youngkin could win by 5, 6, 7, 8. Feels like really I think that would just be a supernova. But look, I think there are two things that are happening at the same time. One is enthusiasm. In California, this ended up evening out at the end. That there were a lot of kind of lukewarm Democrats who weren't excited to vote but did anyway. Democrats need that to happen again in Virginia because there's a major enthusiasm gap in these polls right now. The second thing is, your RVAT voters, your Red Dogs, your Northern Virginia former Republicans. Youngkin has successfully branded himself as less crazy than the crazy. Now, I'm not buying what he's selling on that, but I think the Democrats need to be eyes wide open on the fact that is working. And if you look at the new groups of swing voters, the two groups of swing voters, these kind of older working class Democrats that had moved to Trump, and then you have these suburban, highly educated Republicans that moved to Biden. The Democrats are in deep doo-doo, to use a technical term, if they don't do anything to bring back the working class folks that moved from the union guys that moved from their camp to the Republican camp, and then lose the suburban Republicans back to the Republicans. That is, the math doesn't work for them then. And Youngkin is navigating that. And so I think that the big lesson from this is just talking about Trump is if it goes wrong, if the polls end up being wrong, this is a Northam situation. You can erase all this punditry, and we can revisit it next week. But if it is closer, if it is what we all expect, which is a close race, the lesson is that you have to wedge these guys on in other things. It can't just be about Trump. You have to turn the Republican, crazy, and there is a lot of it. I think that Youngkin kind of really did a good job of tagging McAuliffe with some of the far left stuff being pushed in schools in Northern Virginia, which some of these parents don't like. Some of that was unfair, some of it was fair. But McAuliffe has not done a good job of tagging Youngkin with, oh, you're the candidate of these anti-vax lunatics that are screaming at school board members and stalking their homes, right? Like you have to. It can't just be about Donald Trump, at least for now. If Donald Trump runs again in 2024, maybe that changes. But the Democrats just have not done a good job of either winning that battle in these suburban swing voters in this Virginia race, at least, or doing something to tamp down the Trump voters outstate who should be looking at this Carlisle executive in his vest and being like, this guy's not one of us. But the Democrats don't even seem to be fighting on that ground. So those are basically, the dynamics that have led us to a close race in a place where it really shouldn't be close.
So as we are speaking, Mr. Miller, Adam Kinzinger of Illinois, one of the stand-up guys who voted to impeach Donald Trump, one of the two Republican members of the January 6th Commission, just posted a video saying that he will not seek re-election next year. Not tremendously a surprise given redistricting, but another one gone. Another one of those incredibly rare voices. So you mentioned before you're skeptical about Liz Cheney's path to re-election. Adam Kinzinger is moving on to his next endeavor.
Yeah, I think it's over, Charlie. I mean, we are the dodo bird here, and it was just a matter of time. Gonzalez gets bullied out in Ohio. Kinzinger and I just don't see Cheney's path to victory. I love that. I wish Adam would run. I mean, and I know Adam pretty well, and I understand. You got to move on with your life, and it's a lot of pain. But I like the fact that Liz is going to run, even if it's going to lose. And I said that during the Trump years. I wish Jeff Flake would have stayed and run, stayed and fought. Like there's value in a fight, even in a losing fight. But he's been fighting a good fight, so credit to him. But yeah, look, I think the question is, and this goes back to my original Red Dog article. How can the Democrats attract the Adam Kinzinger types of people and actually bring them in? And it doesn't feel like they're trying that hard.
No, they're not.
And that I think that it is not a winner politically if these folks end up just sort of moving into this no man's land. And so there should be an effort, a recruitment effort, and I've shared this with folks at the various Democratic committees. But it's tough. Like there are a lot of other demands. But I think that the reality is that there certainly is no room for an Adam Kinzinger in the Republican Party anymore. It's an open question whether there is in the other party. Maybe there isn't.
I don't see him moving that way because he is still quite conservative. Liz Cheney is still quite conservative.
Right.
But, this pattern that we're talking about, I made Representative Gonzalez announcing he's not going to run for re-election. It is the self-deportation of the sane, principled members of this party. So not only do you lose those voices, but they'll be replaced by people who are inevitably going to be more deplorable. I mean, maybe the Democrats will pick up the seat, but it's more likely that in many of these cases, it will be a more Trumpian Republican, so that the Congress next year, it's not just that it will, if in fact Republicans win control, which I think is likely, it's not just that it will be more Republican and more conservative. It will be worse in every respect. You won't even have these scattered voices, these principled voices. And of course, these become cautionary tales, right? That if you are a reasonable, principled, sane human being, do you really want to be part of the process? I mean, this seems to be happening throughout. I was discussing this yesterday. Whether you're a member of a school board or an elections official or a congressman or a governor, why do you want to do this? And so what's happening is, the sane, rational, principled folks are, exiting on their own, and their place is going to be taken by the zealots. So, I mean, and that seems to be happening everywhere. So you have the Herschel Walkers, enter stage right while Adam Kinzinger exits stage left. And
Yeah.
how does this play
And I
out?
hear from these people that this is happening at every level, right? So
Yeah.
you have the brave voices like Kinzinger and Gonzalez self-deporting. You have the not brave but normals, well, as I mentioned earlier, like Richard Burr and well, Richard Burr's corrupt, but how about Rob Portman and Roy Blunt self-deporting? Then you have people that might be normal not deciding to run. I hear from people like this who consider themselves conservative. Like, what should I do? And I can't advise them in good conscience to run a Republican primary. They have no chance. And so they just decide, well, maybe I'll just wait it out. Maybe I'll enter politics in a few years, or obviously they'll probably just move on with their life and never enter politics. And then you have at the local level people who are like, I don't want to deal with this. Like, people are going to come to my house and scream at me because I just want kids in school to be safe. And so at every level, you have these sorts of rational people leaving. It is a massive problem, and I think if you look at the Republican caucus next year, it is going to be markedly crazier, markedly more pro-insurrection than it was while Trump was there.
Yeah, I think that's true. In fact, if you look at, I actually was looking at these numbers from 538 when I wrote a piece about Gonzalez. The number of Republicans who have left since January of 2017 when Trump came into office, it's a very, very different caucus now, and it will be dramatically different if he gets back into power. He will have, and let's say that Republicans maintain control. It will be a very different government than we saw in the first term.
Yeah. And look, and I think that if you just sort of if everything moves one standard deviation towards the crazy, you can see the impact in other places. Like I want to rant really quick about DeSantis, if you don't mind.
Please. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, like
My guess.
you see all over my Twitter feed. Slowly but surely, I'm self-deporting from
Mm.
crazy Twitter. But I still keep on. I want to know what conservatives are saying, obviously, and so I keep on your Wall Street Journal types, your Guy Benson types, your National Review types, and the defense of DeSantis over everything is just
Everything.
rabid, right? And so people who might have been on a more who you might have been able to convince to do the Romney, even the John Huntsman types are now like looking around and saying, well, I guess I got to hold on to Ron DeSantis because he's the most normal one that is out there. And so you see them make these completely insane, overwrought defenses of him, and on the virus stuff in particular, where all evidence now is that DeSantis is being wildly irresponsible with this crazy ass new surgeon general. If you look at the charts, Florida has skyrocketed up the deaths per capita chart since the vaccine. Skyrocketed. They've gone from in the 30s below the national average. Just today, they just did another dump of data. They're up to seventh. Florida now is nearing New York and New Jersey and Louisiana, the states that had the original rush before we knew what to do, how to deal with this virus, before we even knew how it spread. Florida's now reaching those levels after we have a damn life-saving vaccine. And meanwhile, you have Carol, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, in the New York Post, who's
Mm.
everyone in the quote unquote center right love, has an article up last night that's like, Ron DeSantis is right again. Because the case rate is going down in Florida. Life is going on. We didn't need all these bans and rules. And it's like, life is not going on. Since we had a life-saving vaccine, there have been 15,000 new deaths in Florida. But because he now is the great hope, the great non-Trumpy hope, for these people to grab onto, they have to like kind of squint and come up with a way that just death and destruction looks good. And so I just think that is related to this whole process, right? When there are no other options
Yeah,
out there,
yeah.
then you find yourself rallying behind eat crazier and crazier and more irresponsible stuff.
I think that's exactly right, and, it's moving the Overton window of crazy, and I was thinking about this in the context of what Tucker Carlson does, is you take stuff that, would have been not considered anywhere, close to the mainstream, when it was on InfoWars, and now it's on Fox, but then you also then move the Overton window of the acceptable candidate, and you're right, I mean, you can see that the National Review types are really, like, whipping themselves into enthusiasm for, because, and in part it's because maybe they think, okay, we need to be, we're not going to be pro Trump, we're going to be maybe Trump, but
Right.
we have to come up with an alternative, we want to be for somebody, And so DeSantis, despite this horrific record, I mean, and you're right. I mean, you can't overstate this. You criticize DeSantis, and you get absolutely flooded with the
Flooded.
DeSantis stands. Whatever.
No,
Okay,
all these people were Marco Rubio in 2016, so you can see the extent of their influence. But
the incredible
uh,
shrinking Marco Rubio. That man's going to be about 2 feet tall by the time this is all over. You're going to be just
hey,
just
Charlie, it's Marco Rubio.
Okay. I have a picture of myself with Marco Rubio. I was a Rubio guy once, but again, we can't litigate. We cannot litigate the past. Oh, and so in any case, I have already made an appointment to get my booster shot, Moderna, my third shot. So that'll be
Good for
next
you.
week. So I will be more bulletproof.
Are you mixing and matching, or are you
Nope, nope.
all Moderna man?
Moderna. Just staying with it. In part because what I like about the Moderna, it's not only is very effective, but I was reading a piece in the Atlantic where they pointed out that one of the reasons why it may be more effective is that they just give bigger doses. I mean that bigger actually matters here. That the larger dose is going to be more effective. So I'll let you know whether or not I have any side effects. I don't really care if I do or whatever because and I'm not going to indulge any of the conspiracy theories or any of the other nuttiness. I mean, of all the things that have happened, and so many things have happened over the. By the way, I did a little spit take when you mentioned we've been saying this for the last half decade.
Half decade.
Half decade. Of all the crazy things, just watching people lose their minds over the vaccines is the worst because you know that that's going to spin into every other scientific debate, every other choice we have to make, every demand or request or requirement of having public spirit, and that's what's so.
Can I
Yes.
give you one more also really depressing thing?
No. I want you to end on a positive note. But go on.
I don't have any. I don't know. I'll talk about our Halloween plans at the end.
Okay.
Here it is. So think about this half decade. I was thinking about this the other day. If you in 2024 are 27 and you're in your mid 20s, not a kid, like you're a grown ass man or woman, 27, 28, like in your career, getting promotions, having families. When Donald Trump came on the scene and took over Republican politics, you were 18.
Mm.
So there is an entire generation of people for whom like this, we always say this is not normal. This is normal, and this is just how things are. And unless you're like one of those nerds like me who was 12 years old watching the Republican convention, getting a thrill at their leg with Bob Dole, if you're a normal child who was just like playing video games or whatever.
Wow.
Like you don't have any perception of anything before this, and you remember Obama and whatever, but you don't really remember like did they run against Obama? So that is it. This is and just think about what effect that has on the body politic and our
Okay, do that age thing again. So if you're how old?
So if you were 18 in 2015 when Trump came on the scene, right? So you're in high school,
right?
When he runs again, almost certainly in 2024, when that election ends, you'll be 27.
Right. And if he's elected,
you'll be 31 when he leaves. So like your whole life will be Donald Trump.
Whole life. Yeah. And you know what? Given that 30, 40 years from now, we're still going to be in a hangover period.
Yeah.
Here we are. So, okay. Okay. So, you going trick-or-treating this weekend?
Well, we're having a little Halloween gathering. Yeah. My daughter, she's dressing up as Peso the Penguin, which is it's from a niche television show called Octonauts. If your kids are looking for a show, it's on Netflix.
The Penguin.
You could not find Octonauts costumes because Octonauts went off the air in 2017. So I paid, thank you Bulwark Plus subscribers, like $65 for an eBay Octonauts costume because she's obsessed with the Octonauts. So I did not go to the Spirit. I went above and beyond. This is like an antique. This is an antique costume.
She's 3 years old.
Yeah, she's 3 years old. Peso is a penguin doctor. He's a penguin doctor. And he goes and saves the other little animals underneath the sea. So she'll be a penguin doctor. I'm going to put on tiger ears and say I'm a tiger, duh. little Mean Girls inside joke for about 3 people who get that. My husband's going to be the dude for The Big Lebowski, and we're going to have some friends over. And, with the grown-ups will have grown-up candy, and the kids will have kids candy, and it'll be all good.
That's a much better plan than I have.
It'll be nice.
We'll have to dress up the dogs or something. But I just have to warn you, Tim, if you're paying out $65 for a costume for your 3-year-old now, you start saving up now for the prom dresses.
Oh my God. I have one other exciting thing though. Because we're having a Halloween party, I have the epic Halloween playlist. So if you made it to the end of this show and you read Jim Swift's newsletter, I'm sending it to him right now. You can have a Halloween playlist of your dreams as well.
Excellent. Thanks for coming on, Tim. I appreciate it.
See you, Charlie.
And thank you all for listening to this weekend's Bulwark podcast. I'm Charlie Sykes. We'll be back on Monday, and we'll do this all over again.